Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to the presentation video series. Now, given that there's just a little bit of changes here and a little bit of changes there along the development process, this is actually the last little bit that I need to have animated for the presentation. Now, I do still need to re-record a little bit of audio here and there because the script has kind of evolved throughout the process. Little changes like this can be expected. But here's the two little animations that I did for this particular video. If you want two windows opened from their icons, they will snap together in their last known configuration. Also, notice that since these icons have been snapped to the interface, they don't disappear like a free-floating icon. And once you're done using that window, you can go ahead and collapse them one. Now, please do keep in mind, I did just say that the audio for this part of the presentation got edited, so this part's been cut out with the audio. So for the first little animation there, it was pretty simple. It was pretty much just moving around the cursor. But for the second animation, I had to get in a few more assets and then kind of compile them into the sub-X sheets and everything like that, and just generally get reorganized a bit. Some of the problems that I had in the previous video, I had once again with the sub-X sheets. Now, I am thinking about making a video pretty soon here that actually shows the behavior of the sub-X sheets and how their current behavior seems to be kind of counterproductive. I mean, it just seems like the workflow that currently exists there only works for one workflow and doesn't really leave it open for any other type of workflow that somebody might actually want to be able to utilize while animating. What resolved the issue with the audio files is I just saved the scene as, and that created a whole new scene file, and for some reason that got the audio to work. I just needed to be careful that I didn't accidentally manipulate the audio in some way in the timeline. Otherwise, that could easily just cause all of the audio to completely malfunction. Which is really frustrating, because I wish that the audio could just work a little bit more reliably so that you don't have to necessarily duplicate the exact same scene all over again by going to save scene as. But I'm glad just that worked, but who's to say that it won't work a second time? It very well may not work a second time, if that makes sense. Something else that I've noticed is that when you go to File, Save Scene As, sometimes some of the function editor information doesn't actually transfer over very well. So some of the free-floating icons, for example, they kept getting resized. So that proved to be pretty frustrating. I had to get a file that I already rendered from a previous scene inside of this presentation, and then I had to make the free-floating icons about the same size as the free-floating icons in the previously rendered scene, which seemed a little bit unnecessary to me. Now, the workflow for everything that I'm doing here, I've already kind of discussed inside of a previous video. So there's nothing new to really what I'm doing here when compared to something that I've done in a previous video. However, there are a number of things that I'd like to say, seeing as this is coming to a close here with me having to work on this presentation video series. Next time I go about doing something like this, I think I'm going to create the storyboard, create the audio files and all that, and then maybe I might ask the community here if they'd like to participate and coordinate some efforts towards making the next presentation next time that I'm thinking about creating a new, feature request or graphic user interface upgrade or something along those lines. Just because this is a lot of work. Although one of the things that I think brings people to my channel is the fact that I do help fund feature requests for Opentoonz, and I also do create bounties and crowdsourcing and such like that in order to get new features and such into Opentoonz. I don't think that people necessarily come to my channel to watch me make a presentation on a feature request. It's very time consuming and such like that. But if for the next time that I need to make a presentation, other people want to jump on board and help make that presentation, I'll give you guys full credit and everything like that within the actual presentation itself. So that'll be pretty cool. Now, I've already explained this workflow a number of times, so there's not going to be too much exposition as to what's going on the screen right now, or throughout this entire video. I'm near the end of the actual process of making everything for this presentation, and so I'm going to be talking more so about the whole time working on this project and such like that. After a while, you get used to working with sub-X sheets. You get this ebb and flow, a nice little rhythm going on. But, you know, you do have to explode sub-X sheets every once in a while and then collapse them again. If you use this specific workflow that I've been using throughout the entire time that I've been making this presentation video series, where you go File, Save Scene As. Because what winds up happening is you'll have one scene that you'll only need something like 200 frames. And then the next scene, you'll need something like 600 frames. And this causes a problem for sub-X sheets for this specific reason. So whether you're working with a sub-X sheet or a regular column on the timeline, whenever you extend a frame on the timeline or X sheet or something, you wind up with a series of frames that have a line going right through them, rather than having numeric values associated to every single frame. No, when you wind up exposing a frame for a series of frames, it just has a line through it. This is the same with a sub-X sheet. But the thing is when you're inside of a sub-X sheet, and then you use the edit in place, the edit in place will only show the numeric frames. It won't show any content going on outside of the sub-X sheet on frames where on the main X sheet it's just an exposed frame with a line going through it, or if the sub-X sheet ends at that point on the main X sheet or timeline, okay? So this causes a problem. Even if you wind up adding more frames and editing things together, regardless of the edit in place, once you exit out of the sub-X sheet, you won't see any of the new content that you created inside of the sub-X sheet beyond the point of the extended frame or anything like that. Even if you still see that sub-X sheet showing on that particular frame, if it's not a numeric frame, it's not going to actually display any of the new changes on the main timeline or the main sub-X sheet. So this can get really frustrating. You have to explode sub-X sheets and then collapse them again whenever you go File, Save Scene As. That's just going to have to be the workflow every single time that you wind up having a scene that's going to wind up being longer than your previous scene. I know that this might be confusing. Like I said previously, I'm going to have a video dedicated towards the problems with the current way that sub-X sheets behave. It is frustrating. Here's another thing that's frustrating about sub-X sheets. Okay, so you have this sub-X sheet on your scene that has been there for hours and hours and hours. You've been working with the sub-X sheet for a while. And then you add a new column, okay? And then you decide, hey, this new column needs to be inside of that sub-X sheet. And then you collapse it into that sub-X sheet, and suddenly that sub-X sheet, its name has been changed to a column number. So you have to rename the sub-X sheet again. This gets really annoying because sometimes you just have a brain fart and you have no idea what you named that sub-X sheet. So you have to go into the sub-X sheet, look at what it's called, just kind of figure it out, and then exit out and then rename the sub-X sheet. Or it's just you forget to rename the sub-X sheet and hours pass, and then once you need to use that sub-X sheet, you can't find it because the sub-X sheet has been called a column number. That's really irritating. It really is. It's extremely frustrating. Why would it work like that? Why doesn't it just keep the same name that it had previously? Now, I understand the sub-X sheet with the name actually has wound up becoming a sub-X sheet inside of this new sub-X sheet when you collapse the new column into it. But even still, that's stupid. Why would it behave like that? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Why would the software behave like that? Why does it create two sub-X sheets? Why can't you just have some sort of option to collapse that one column into the currently existing sub-X sheet without creating two sub-X sheets? That way you don't have to rename the sub-X sheet every single time you need to collapse just one column into the sub-X sheet that already exists. Now, I understand, again, it's very difficult for people to understand this verbally spoken. Like, I figure this information should be relayed into this particular video simply because these are problems that I wound up facing while working on this project. Now, to talk about a different topic. Now, everything inside of this presentation is a series of things that I feel are the major issue with the graphic user interface with Opentoonz. Now, I wanted collapsible windows to have more features, but we're probably not going to get those extra features unless we wind up getting overfunded kind of significantly, because it's going to be an order of magnitude more complex. Like, for example, let's say you collapse your X sheet, okay, or your timeline, and then you go ahead and snap that free-floating icon to the side of the screen. Now, it would be really cool for you to have a button that exists on the snapped, collapsed window if it had a button on there that you could press, and it winds up unfolding a really small timeline that has just a few of the features that the timeline has. That would be extremely useful. Instead of having this enormous timeline or this enormous X sheet on the screen all of the time, you can actually have access to something like a quarter of the features that you'd need for a timeline or an X sheet on the screen at all times, and it just takes up a fraction of the size of the actual timeline itself. Like, that would be extremely useful. However, in order to put all of that into the collapsible windows functionality, it would take a lot more programming. So like I said, all of these other added features that I want to have with the collapsible windows, they would wind up being extremely expensive. So this specific crowdfunding project that I'm creating with this presentation is geared towards just addressing the main core problem: not having enough screen space for the viewer and having too many windows on the screen all at once, on the screen all the time, and there's no reason for that. Now, it would be nice to have all the other functionality, all the other nice bells and whistles and such like that, but I don't think that's going to be possible this time around. Now, if we get overfunded, cool, we might be able to put all of that extra functionality into it. If we don't, I might revisit the extra functionality that I would like to see inside of the collapsible windows, but who knows when that'll be. I already have 5 or 6 other bounties that I'd like to tackle, and each one of these bounties sometimes takes a year for it to be finished. So far with the Krita-like assistant tool, so far it took half a year for it to get fully funded, and it's taken close to 6 months or so for it to actually get into a workable state. Now, currently, it's still under development, but the people that are working with the Marevna project, they've been able to actually show demos currently, right now, using the assistant tools inside of Opentoonz, which gets me really excited because, hey, that's something that I help fund. That's something that I help make into a reality into Opentoonz. I can't wait till that gets released to the general public. So each one of these bounties, each one of these added features and such like that, very well may take 1 year to actually fully execute. Again, who knows when I'll be able to come back to working with the collapsible windows and adding the extra functionality. Who knows, somebody else might actually wind up seeing it and want to add it in later on down the road without necessarily needing a bounty. But who knows? Again, who knows? It's open source. Who knows what other developers are going to want to do or be willing to do and all that good stuff. Now, Black Warthog, he's the guy that's developing the Creta-like Assistant tool. He's busy with that right now. Now, eventually, he's going to be working on the collapsible windows as well. So he's the same developer that's going to be working on everything here. So there's no rush for me to just jump right into making a crowdfunding campaign and all that. It is something that I'm going to be working towards, but I don't want to make it so that this thing has the whole crowdfunding campaign start and finish, get fully funded or not, who knows, and then have him just have such a huge workload that he's not going to be able to work on it after all, or he's just going to be too busy to work on this immediately. I just want everything to be a smooth transition, but I am also going to be posting the finished presentation here on my channel as well, and all that good stuff. So yeah, anyways guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you guys didn't like it, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. And if you guys would like to take a look at any of my other videos, feel free to click on any of them that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.